On the morning of September 11th, 2001, a 27-year-old man missed his flight by 10 minutes. He was hungover. His travel agent had given him the wrong departure time. The flight he missed was American Airlines Flight 11, the first plane that hit the World Trade Center. The man's name was Seth MacFarlane. The cartoon he had just created, a struggling Fox show called Family Guy, almost died with him that morning. The show survived. It got canceled twice anyway. It came back from the dead through a plastic disc. It went on to make jokes about Kevin Spacey 12 years before the world knew. It killed off its most loved character for ratings. It got one episode banned forever in the United States. It built a recurring pedophile into one of its most loved characters. And it kept its audience laughing through all of it for over 25 years. Welcome to Sleepy Broadcast. Tonight we walk through the dark side of Family Guy, starting with the hangover that saved an empire, Seth MacFarlane and American Airlines Flight 11. The morning of September 11th, 2001, started in a Boston hotel room with a young man waking up late, sick, and confused. He had been drinking the night before. His head was pounding. The clock said something he did not want to believe. His travel agent had given him the wrong departure time. He thought his flight left at 8:15 in the morning. The flight actually left at 7:45. He had 30 fewer minutes than he thought he did, and he was already running behind because of the hangover. He grabbed his bag, threw on his clothes, and made his way to Logan International Airport as fast as he could. His name was Seth MacFarlane. He was 27 years old. He was the creator of a cartoon called Family Guy, a show that had already been struggling on Fox and was about to be canceled in a few months. He was flying to Los Angeles to do some work on the show. He had a seat booked on American Airlines Flight 11, a regular daily flight from Boston to Los Angeles. The flight was supposed to be a few hours of sitting in a plane and reading a book. There was no reason to think that day would be any different from any other travel day. He got to the counter at the airport about 10 minutes too late. The woman at the counter looked at him and told him the gate was already closed. They had finished boarding. He had missed it. He thought about being annoyed for a moment, the way anyone would be annoyed about a missed flight, and then he asked her to put him on the next one. She booked him for the 11 o'clock. He thanked her, walked into the lounge, and sat down. He was still tired. He still felt sick from the night before. He fell asleep in the chair. About 45 minutes later, he woke up to the sound of people shouting. Something was wrong. People were standing up, pointing at televisions, gathering in clusters. The sound of the gate area had gone strange. A plane had hit the World Trade Center in New York City. He sat up and watched the screen. The first tower was on fire, smoke pouring out of the side of the building, and people were trying to figure out how a passenger plane could have crashed into something so big and so easy to see. While he watched, the second plane hit. The room went silent for a few seconds, and then loud again in a different way. People were crying. People were calling family members. The airport stopped working. Every flight in the country was being grounded. Then they announced which flight had hit the first tower. It was American Airlines Flight 11, Boston to Los Angeles, the flight he had been booked on, the flight he had a paper ticket for, the flight he had walked up to the counter for 10 minutes too late. He turned to the man sitting next to him in the lounge and said the words he would later repeat in interviews for the rest of his life. He said, "My God, that was the flight I was supposed to be on. I was late. I missed it." American Airlines Flight 11 had taken off at 7:59 in the morning. There were 81 passengers on board, plus 11 crew members. 5 of those passengers were members of a terrorist group called Al-Qaeda. About 15 minutes into the flight, those 5 men attacked the cockpit, killed the pilots, and took control of the plane. They turned the plane south toward Manhattan. At 8:46 in the morning, they flew it into the North Tower of the World Trade Center at about 450 miles per hour. Every single person on that plane died on impact. Hundreds of people died inside the building. Over the rest of that day, thousands more would die in the towers, in the Pentagon, and in a field in Pennsylvania. If McFarlane's travel agent had given him the right departure time, he would have been on that plane. If he had not been hungover, he would have been on that plane. If the woman at the counter had been a little more flexible about the boarding deadline, he would have been on that plane. He was 27 years old, sitting in a chair in an airport lounge, watching the building that his plane had just hit, and learning that he was alive only because he had stayed out too late and had been given the wrong time by mistake. There is something almost impossible to think about clearly here. Family Guy is one of the longest-running animated shows in television history. As of today, the show has more than 400 episodes. It has run for more than 2 decades. It has spun off into 3 other shows. It has made hundreds of millions of dollars. McFarlane went on to create American Dad, The Cleveland Show, and a film career that includes Ted, A Million Ways to Die in the West, and the new Cosmos series with Neil deGrasse Tyson. None of that exists if he is on time for the flight. None of it. The cartoon empire that millions of people grew up on, the cutaway gags they quote, the songs they sing, the characters they love, all of it depends on a hangover and a typo on a piece of paper. There is another piece of this story that most people do not know. Mark Wahlberg, the actor, was also originally booked on American Airlines Flight 11 that morning. He changed his plans at the last minute and flew to Toronto for a film festival instead. 2 famous men were both supposed to be on the same plane. Both of them missed it for completely random reasons. Both of them lived. Years later, McFarlane and Wahlberg ended up working together on the film Ted, where McFarlane voiced the bear and Wahlberg played the lead. The 2 men, who were not supposed to be alive, made one of the highest-grossing comedy films of the decade together. When McFarlane was asked about the experience years later, he gave answers that surprised people. He did not become religious. He did not change his lifestyle. He did not become a deeply different person. He told the New York Times in 2004 that he probably approached everything the same way he always had. He said, "There are probably 100 close calls for all of us every year, and we do not even realize it." He said maybe one day the whole thing would really hit him, but it had not yet. On the Piers Morgan show in 2011, he repeated that he was not a fatalist, that he had missed planes before, and that coincidences happen. He said he was not shaken to the core in a way that changed his whole outlook on life, but the show itself was shaken. Family Guy has built more material around the September 11th attacks than almost any other comedy on television. There is a moment in one episode where Brian and Stewie quietly say to each other that they were both supposed to be on one of those planes, a joke that only works if you remember that McFarlane voices both of them. There is a whole episode called Back to the Pilot, where Brian and Stewie travel back in time and stop the attacks from happening, and the world ends up worse, and they have to go back and let the attacks happen, and then they high-five each other for it. Stewie immediately notes that the high five would look very bad if anyone saw it out of context. The show keeps coming back to that day. It keeps poking at it. It keeps making it into jokes that some people find funny and some people find unforgivable. The show is run by a man who came within 10 minutes of being one of the names on the memorial wall, and the show acts like it. The hangover that saved Seth MacFarlane saved every character he has ever voiced. It saved Peter Griffin. It saved Stewie. It saved Brian. It saved Roger from American Dad. It saved Ted the bear. It saved everything that came after. The cartoon you fell asleep to as a teenager, the cutaway gags you sent to your friends, the songs you have heard 100 times, all of it came from a man sitting in an airport lounge in Boston, watching a building burn on a television, learning that the only reason he was breathing was a clerical error and a few too many drinks the night before. There is no clean way to think about that. There is no funny version of that thought. The empire is built on a piece of luck so thin it barely holds. And the strangest part is that the show went on to act like nothing happened. The cartoon kept its silly tone. The jokes kept coming. The cutaway gags kept playing. The first episode after the attacks did not address what had nearly happened to the man behind the show. The world moved on, and the show moved with it, and the audience kept laughing at a fat man falling downstairs and a baby trying to take over the world. The luck of that morning got buried under 20 years of cartoon noise. Most people who watch Family Guy have no idea that it almost did not exist. They have no idea that the voice of the dog they love was supposed to be silenced before it ever became famous. That kind of buried weight, sitting underneath a comedy show, is the first piece of the dark side of Family Guy. The show is built on a lucky escape from a mass killing, and the show has been pretending that does not matter for as long as it has been on the air. The cartoon laughs, while the man behind it carries something he will never fully be able to talk about. Before we move on, if you are enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. The story of how the show stayed alive after that morning is its own kind of strange. The show should have been cancelled in the weeks after September 11th. It was already losing in the ratings. It was already on the chopping block. The fact that it survived at all has nothing to do with luck and everything to do with a fight that lasted years, with 2 cancellations, a graveyard slot, and a piece of plastic nobody at Fox saw coming. But before that, there is a different kind of dark side to examine, and it involves the one episode Fox refused to air, Partial Terms of Endearment. There is a sentence about Family Guy that almost nobody thinks about, and it is true even today, more than 15 years later. The show has run for over 400 episodes. It has aired on Fox, on Adult Swim, on Comedy Central, on FXX, on Hulu, on Disney channels, and on networks all over the world. Fans have watched almost every part of the show in almost every possible way. There are box sets, streaming options, late-night reruns, daytime reruns, and clip channels on the internet that play episodes around the clock. And yet, in all of that, there is exactly one episode that has never been shown on a single American television network. Not one. Not in late night, not on cable, not on a streaming service. The episode exists. It has been finished. It has been animated, voiced, scored, and packaged. The network simply decided that it would not air, and the network has held that decision for more than 15 years. The episode is called Partial Terms of Endearment. It was made as the final episode of Season 8, and it was supposed to air in the spring of 2010 as the season finale, the kind of big swing that closes out a year of television. The story it tells is simple, the way most Family Guy stories are simple on the surface. Lois runs into an old college friend named Naomi at the supermarket. Naomi and her husband Dale have been trying to have a baby for years. They cannot. They ask Lois if she would be willing to carry the baby for them as a surrogate. Lois agrees. Peter does not love the idea, but he goes along with it. Lois gets pregnant with Naomi and Dale's child. Things move forward like a normal pregnancy plot in a normal sitcom episode. Then, Naomi and Dale die in a car crash, just like that. The 2 people who were going to be the parents of the baby growing inside Lois are suddenly gone. Lois is left holding a pregnancy that was never supposed to be hers. The rest of the episode is a long argument inside the Griffin household about what she should do. Peter starts the episode certain that Lois should keep the baby. Peter then meets pro-life protesters who scare him with horror stories. Peter changes his mind and starts pushing Lois the other way. Lois has to think for herself, between 2 men shouting at her in opposite directions about what she actually wants. The episode walks through real arguments that real people have. It does this in the same crude, joke-heavy style Family Guy uses for everything else, with cutaways and one-liners, and Peter doing something stupid every few minutes. But the spine of the story is genuine. There are arguments for keeping the pregnancy. There are arguments for ending it. The episode does not pretend the choice is easy. In the very last seconds of the episode, the family is sitting at the dinner table. Lois starts to talk about a wonderful new member of the Griffin family. Peter cuts her off. He turns to the camera. He tells the audience that they had the abortion. The episode ends. Credits roll. Fox saw the finished episode and pulled it from the schedule. The decision was made well before season 8 even started airing. The Family Guy team announced the ban at the San Diego Comic-Con in the summer of 2009, almost a full year before the episode would have aired. They told the room of fans that the network had refused to put it on the air in the United States. They said the episode existed and would be released somehow, but it would never be broadcast on Fox. There was a strange honesty in announcing it that early. The team did not try to hide what had happened. They did not pretend the episode was simply unfinished or delayed. They told the audience that Fox had decided abortion was the line they were not willing to cross, even on a show that had spent more than a decade crossing every other line that exists. This is the part of the story that has bothered Seth MacFarlane the most. He spoke to the New York Times about the decision. He said he could not understand the inconsistency of it. The same network had aired an episode about gay marriage. The same network had aired an episode about the BP oil spill. The same network had aired episodes about September 11th, the Holocaust, child abuse, mass murder, sexual violence, religious mockery, and almost every other subject a comedy could possibly try to touch. And the line somehow was an abortion plot, where the abortion happens off-screen and is mentioned in a single sentence at the end of the episode. He said there was nothing about the topic that should be any different from the other heavy things the show had already covered. He pointed out that the whole power of comedy is that it can open up hard conversations and let people think about hard things in a softer way. The network disagreed. The network kept the ban. So the episode found another life outside of America. The British television network BBC3 picked it up. They aired partial terms of endearment on June 20th, 2010 in their primetime 10:30 slot. About 1 million people watched it that night in the United Kingdom. The reviews were mostly positive. Critics there did not see the episode as anything close to the worst thing Family Guy had done. Many of them found it thoughtful. Some of them found it surprisingly fair to both sides of the argument. The fact that the same episode could be considered a normal night of comedy in one country and a permanent ban in another country says something about how much a network's decision shapes what an audience even gets to see. In the United States, the episode came out on DVD a few months later. Fox released it on the Family Guy Volume 8 DVD set on September 28, 2010. Fans who wanted to see it had to buy the disc. Years later, the episode was made available to purchase on Amazon as part of a Family Guy special. It has been available in the country in some form for over a decade. American adults can pay money and watch it. They simply cannot turn on a television, find a Family Guy rerun, and stumble across it the way they would any other episode. It is missing from Hulu. It is missing from FXX. It was missing from Adult Swim during the years the channel ran the show. The episode is a hole in the show's run that only exists because one network decided one Sunday night could not include one specific story. There is one other Family Guy episode that came close to this kind of fate, and the comparison is worth pausing on. Back in Season 3, the show made an episode called When You Wish Upon a Weinstein. It was finished in 2000. It was supposed to air on Fox that year. The network looked at it and decided that the content might be seen as cruel toward Jewish people. The episode involved Peter trying to get a Jewish friend so his money problems would be solved, and the original lyrics of the song he sang included a line about killing his lord. Fox refused to air it. The episode sat on a shelf for 3 years. It finally aired on Adult Swim on November 9th, 2003. and on Fox itself in December 2004. So the Weinstein episode was held back, but eventually it ran. Partial terms of endearment never did. That is the difference between a delayed episode and a banned one. When the show came back from its long break and started doing well again, it could have quietly slipped partial terms of endearment into a late-night slot. It could have buried it on a Sunday at 1 in the morning, the way networks sometimes hide episodes they do not love. The show could have used the episode for a sweeps week stunt. None of that happened. Year after year, the episode stayed off the air. Even after streaming made every other Family Guy episode available with one click on Hulu, this one stayed missing from the streaming home of the show. A child born the month the episode was banned is now in high school. They have grown up watching Family Guy. There is one episode in the run they have never been allowed to watch on television. The episode itself, when watched today, is honestly nothing like the worst thing Family Guy has ever done. The cutaways are not particularly dark. The jokes are not particularly cruel. The story handles the subject with more care than the show usually shows. There is no graphic content. There is no shock value moment that would be hard to watch. The line that ended the episode, the one Peter says to the camera about having the abortion, is over in 3 seconds. A modern viewer who watched the episode without knowing it was banned would probably think it was a slightly more serious than usual Family Guy. They would not understand why this was the one Fox could not handle. What the episode reveals is something about where television in America draws its hidden lines. A network can air a cutaway of a man being killed by a car. A network can air a baby trying to murder his mother. A network can air a pedophile chasing a teenage boy and call him a recurring fan favorite. A network can air songs about the Holocaust. A network can air every kind of darkness imaginable, and most of the time the audience laughs and the show keeps going. Touch one specific subject in one specific way, and the same network that allowed everything else suddenly draws a hard line that cannot be crossed. The line is not about how dark the episode is. The line is about which dark things have crossed into territory the country does not want to see joked about, even softly, on a Sunday night. So partial terms of endearment sits in a strange limbo. It is not lost. It is not unfinished. It is not even hard to find for an adult who wants to see it. It is simply absent from the place where everyone watches Family Guy. It is the negative space inside the show. Every list of Family Guy episodes has a small hole in it where this episode should be, and the hole has stayed open for 15 years. The show is famous for going too far. The network is famous for letting the show go too far. And here is the one moment in over 400 episodes where the network said no. Take a moment to subscribe before we continue if this is holding your attention. The strangest part of the dark side of Family Guy is not that the show kept making episodes too dark for television. The strangest part is what happened the next time the show pushed close to a real-life event. 3 years after the abortion episode was banned, in the spring of 2013, an episode did air on Fox. Millions of people watched it the night it came out. The cutaway inside it was the kind of thing the show had done 1,000 times before. And then, 29 days later, something happened in a city called Boston that turned the cutaway into one of the most uncomfortable 30 seconds of animation ever broadcast in America. This is the story of Turban Cowboy and the Boston Marathon, the cutaway that aired 29 days before the bombing. On the night of March 17, 2013, a Sunday, Family Guy aired a brand new episode called Turban Cowboy. It was the 15th episode of the 11th season. The show was deep into its run by then, comfortable in its Sunday night slot on Fox, sitting between The Simpsons and Bob's Burgers in what the network called animation domination. About 6 million people watched the episode that night in their living rooms. Most of them did not think very hard about it. It was a normal Family Guy episode in a normal Family Guy week. The plot was the kind of risky idea the show had been doing since it came back from its long cancellation. Peter goes skydiving and pulls his parachute too late. He survives the fall, but ends up in the hospital with broken bones and a few weeks of recovery time ahead of him. While he is in the hospital, he meets a man named Mahmoud, who happens to be Muslim. The two of them become friends. Peter decides he wants to convert. Peter starts dressing in traditional Muslim clothing. He starts going to the mosque. He starts learning prayers. The joke, the way Family Guy always sets up its jokes, is that Peter is bad at every single part of this and turns the whole thing into a circus. He says the wrong things. He gets the customs wrong. He embarrasses Mahmoud constantly. The first half of the episode runs on Peter being clueless about a religion he does not understand. The second half of the episode takes a darker turn. Mahmoud is secretly a member of a terrorist group. He has been waiting for the right moment to recruit Peter into helping him with an attack. He tricks Peter into pressing a button on a phone that, unknown to Peter, sets off a bomb somewhere in the city. Peter realizes too late what he has done. He has to figure out how to stop the rest of Mahmoud's plan before more people get killed. The episode ends with Peter helping Joe and the Quahog police stop a much bigger bombing at the bottom of a bridge. Peter saves the day. The credits roll. Another Family Guy Sunday in the books. Inside that episode, somewhere in the middle of the second act, there is a cutaway gag. A cutaway gag is the show's most famous joke style. The story pauses for a few seconds. The screen flashes to a quick scene that has almost nothing to do with the main story. The scene plays out for a beat or two. The screen flashes back to where it was before. Family Guy uses these cutaways constantly. They are the heartbeat of the show. There are thousands of them across the run. Most of them are silly. Some of them are dark. A small handful of them are the kind of cutaway that makes a person sit up on the couch and ask if the show really just did that. The cutaway in Turban Cowboy was a Boston Marathon joke. Peter is in his car. Peter drives toward a finish line. Runners are crossing the finish line. Peter does not stop the car. The car plows through the runners. Bodies fly. Peter celebrates. The screen flashes back to the main story. 3 or 4 seconds total, a throwaway joke in an episode about something else. 29 days later, on April 15, 2013, 2 pressure cooker bombs went off near the actual finish line of the actual Boston Marathon. The bombs were planted by 2 brothers named Tamerlan and Dzhokhar Tsarnaev. The first bomb exploded at 2:49 in the afternoon, 12 seconds before the second bomb went off about 100 yards down the street. 3 people died in the blasts: a young woman named Crystal Campbell, a graduate student from China named Lingzi Liu, and an 8-year-old boy named Martin Richard. 264 other people were wounded. Some lost arms, some lost legs, some lost both. The city of Boston shut down for days while police searched for the bombers. Tamerlan was killed in a shootout. Dzhokhar was found hiding in a boat in a backyard in the suburb of Watertown 4 days later, after a manhunt that locked down the entire metro area. The country watched the bombing unfold on every news channel. The footage of the explosions, the smoke, the runners falling, the people screaming, the bystanders rushing in to help, all of it played on a loop for days. And then somebody on the internet remembered that Family Guy had aired a Boston Marathon cutaway less than a month earlier. The screenshots went up, the clip went up, the phrase Family Guy predicted the Boston Marathon bombing started spreading. It was not just the cutaway in Turban Cowboy that fed the rumor. It was the fact that the same episode also had Peter triggering a bomb by pressing a button on his phone. The cutaway about driving through marathon runners and the main story about Peter accidentally setting off a bomb were in the same 22 minutes of television. To anyone scrolling fast on the internet, the two things blurred together. Within a day, hoax videos started popping up on YouTube. The hoax videos cut the marathon cutaway and the bomb scene from Turban Cowboy together into one fake clip, made it look like one continuous scene, and added text claiming Family Guy had shown the bombing in detail before it happened. The fake clips spread fast. People who never watched the show were suddenly sharing them. The line started forming online that the show had somehow known. Fox moved within hours. The network pulled Turban Cowboy from its website. They pulled it from Hulu. They told the press they had no immediate plans to air the episode again. The Family Guy team said the same thing. The show went into damage control because a regular cutaway from a regular episode had collided with a real tragedy in a way nobody had seen coming. Seth MacFarlane spoke out himself. He went on his official accounts and condemned the hoax videos directly. He called the splicing of the two scenes abhorrent. He pointed out that the actual cutaway was a one-off marathon joke and not a bombing scene at all, and that the bomb scene in the same episode was Peter pressing a phone button, not a finish line attack. He asked people to stop sharing the fake edits. He said the joke was a joke and the tragedy was a tragedy, and putting the two side by side was a cruelty he wanted no part of. The Los Angeles Times ran his statement on April 16th, the day after the bombing, but the damage was already done. The episode was off the air. The cutaway had become forever attached to a real event. Fans who had laughed at the joke on March 17th felt sick about it on April 15th. Some of them said they would never watch the episode again. Some of them argued that the show should not be punished for a coincidence. The argument went on for weeks online. The show kept airing new episodes through April and May, but the Boston Marathon shadow stayed over the season for the rest of its run. Turban Cowboy did eventually come back to television. Fox put it back into the rerun rotation in 2014, about a year after the bombing. They did not make a big announcement about it. The episode simply showed up on the schedule one night, the same way it had been pulled, quietly, hoping the audience had moved on. It mostly worked. The episode is still part of the regular run today. It came back to Hulu in September 2022, after years off the platform. A whole generation of Family Guy fans on streaming had no idea the episode had ever been pulled in the first place. What makes Turban Cowboy a permanent piece of the dark side of the show is not the cutaway by itself. The show had done 100 jokes about 100 terrible things by the time it aired. The cutaway about driving through marathon runners is, on its face, a 15-second bit that any other Sunday would have been forgotten by Tuesday. What makes it permanent is the timing. 29 days, less than a month, between the joke airing on national television and the joke happening in real life. Less than a month between a cartoon plowing through runners and a real bomb shredding through the same kind of crowd in the same kind of city. There have been other cases like this in television history. Shows have made fictional jokes about real events that ended up coming true. The Simpsons has gotten famous for it. South Park has done it more than once. Family Guy itself has had several other moments where a joke from years earlier suddenly looked like it had seen the future, including the Kevin Spacey moment from 2005 and the Harvey Weinstein joke from the 2013 Oscars. The phrase Family Guy predicted it has become a meme of its own. But the Boston Marathon cutaway is the one with the shortest gap. It is the one with the most direct overlap. It is the one that aired so close to the real thing that some viewers genuinely believed for a few days that the show must have known something the rest of the country did not. It did not. Of course, nobody at Family Guy had any idea what was about to happen in Boston. The cutaway was written months in advance. The animation took months to finish. The episode was locked long before the Tsarnaev brothers ever decided to plant their bombs. The show was simply unlucky. The show had been mining the darkest parts of American life for jokes for over a decade, and the law of averages caught up with it. Pull enough triggers, and eventually one of them lands in a place you never wanted it to land. But the discomfort that came after the bombing did not go away when the truth came out. The discomfort lingered. The fact that the show had been willing to make the joke at all, the fact that crashing a car through the Boston Marathon had even seemed funny enough to put on screen, became its own conversation. People started looking back at older episodes and asking why so many of the show's quick cutaways involved violence in public places. They started counting the school shooting jokes. They started counting the terrorism jokes. They started counting the cutaways where ordinary crowds in ordinary places got run down or blown up or attacked for a punchline. The Boston Marathon cutaway forced a question the show had avoided for years. The question was whether constantly making jokes about real kinds of violence trained the audience to laugh at things that were not actually funny when they happened in the real world. There is a thing Seth MacFarlane himself has said about that scene in interviews since. He has said he regrets the joke. He has not said he regrets the whole episode. He has said the cutaway specifically is a moment he wishes had not been written. He has called it one of the few cutaways he genuinely wishes he could pull from the show forever. That is a rare thing for him to say. He has defended almost every other piece of dark Family Guy material across the years. He has fought for the abortion episode. He has fought for the religious jokes. He has fought for the school shooting jokes. He has fought for the things the network tried to take away. The Boston Marathon cutaway is the one piece of his own work he has admitted more than once was a mistake. The cutaway is still there in the episode today. If a fan watches Turban Cowboy on Hulu now, the scene plays the same way it did in 2013. Nothing has been edited out. The car still crashes through the runners. The bodies still fly. Peter still celebrates. The show could have edited the moment and pretended it never existed. The show chose not to. The cutaway is preserved exactly as it aired the first time, 29 days before the bombs went off. It sits inside the episode like a fossil, a reminder of a Sunday night when 6 million people laughed at a joke the country was about to live through for real. Do subscribe before the next one if this is landing for you. What none of those 6 million people knew when they laughed at the cutaway in March of 2013 was that the show was about to make an even bigger gamble with its audience 8 months later. The next gamble would not be about a real-world event. The next gamble would be about something inside the show itself, something a fan base had loved for 14 years, about to be killed off in the most painful way the writers could think of. This is Life of Brian, killing the heart of the show for ratings. On the night of November 24th, 2013, Family Guy did something it had never done in its 14 years on the air. It killed one of the 5 Griffins. Not a side character, not a guest star, not a one-off death played for a laugh. It killed Brian, the dog, the voice of reason, the character at the center of the show's emotional life, the one most fans named first when they were asked who they loved most about the show. The writers picked the most loved character on the wall and put a target on him. The episode was called Life of Brian. It was the 6th episode of the 12th season, the 216th episode of the show overall. The episode aired on a Sunday at 9 in the evening, the regular Family Guy slot on Fox. About 6.5 million people watched it live the night it ran. Most of them had no idea what was coming. None of them ever forgot it. The episode opened with Brian and Stewie in the middle of one of their regular time travel adventures. The two of them were running from a band of Native Americans in a Jeep, in a future where Stewie had accidentally given guns to the Native Americans during an earlier trip back in time, which had let them wipe out the European settlers. Brian and Stewie used Stewie's time machine to get back to the present. They fixed the timeline. They got home. The two of them were tired of the close calls that kept happening on these trips. Stewie made a decision. He took the time machine apart. He took the return pad apart. He drove the broken pieces to the junkyard and dumped them. The time machine was gone. Whatever happened next in the episode, there would be no way to use the machine to undo it. That choice was the writers signaling something to the audience. The show had used time travel as a safety net for years. Anything that happened in any episode could be reversed if the writers wanted it reversed. By having Stewie destroy the machine on screen, In detail, in the same episode where the worst thing was about to happen, the writers were telling fans that this time the worst thing was going to stick. There would be no rewind. There would be no undo button. Whatever came next was permanent. While at the junkyard, Brian and Stewie found a street hockey net. They took it home. They set it up in front of the Griffin house and started playing. Brian was the goalie. Stewie was taking shots. The two of them were having a normal afternoon, the way they had been having normal afternoons together for over 200 episodes. A car came around the corner. The driver was not paying attention. The car hit Brian directly. Brian was thrown across the street. The car kept going. The family rushed Brian to the vet. The vet looked at the damage and gave the family the news no Family Guy fan had ever heard from a vet on the show before. Brian was not going to make it. The injuries were too serious. There was no surgery that could fix what had happened. The family stood around Brian in the vet's office. Peter cried, Lois cried, Chris cried, Meg cried. Stewie stood there and watched his best friend dying and could not say anything for a long time. Brian, in his last few moments, looked up at the family that had been his family for 14 years on television. He told them he loved them all. He thanked them. He died. The episode did not soften the moment. There was no joke pulling the audience out of it. There was no last-second rescue. There was no cutaway to break the tension. The show let Brian's death sit on the screen the way a real death sits in a real room. The animation was slow. The music was sad. The voice acting was straight. The Family Guy that had spent 14 years cutting away from feelings let this feeling stay in the frame. After Brian died, the family went home. The house felt empty. Stewie kept walking past Brian's bed and stopping. The other Griffins kept catching themselves about to call for him before remembering. The family drove to a pet store to look at puppies. They came home with a new dog. His name was Vinny. He was an Italian-American dog from New York. He was voiced by Tony Sirico, the actor famous for playing Paulie Walnuts on The Sopranos. Vinny moved into the Griffin house. He started sitting where Brian used to sit. He started talking the way Brian used to talk to the family at dinner. The episode ended with Vinny falling asleep next to Stewie's bed, in the spot where Brian had slept for 14 seasons. The credits rolled. Fans stared at their screens. The internet lost its mind. Within hours, a petition appeared on the website change.org. The petition was titled simply, "Asking for the Resurrection of Brian Griffin." The text read that Brian was an important part of the viewing experience, that he had added a witty and sophisticated element to the show, and that Family Guy and Fox would lose viewers if Brian was not brought back. The petition grew faster than almost any entertainment petition the site had ever seen. Within 24 hours, it had thousands of signatures. Within a week, it had over 100,000. Fans posted videos of themselves crying. Fans wrote essays online. Fans flooded the show's social media accounts with the same demand. Bring Brian back. Bring him back now. Bring him back, or we are done with the show. The reaction surprised even Seth MacFarlane. He spoke about it later in interviews. He said the team had thought killing Brian would create a little bit of a stir. He said the rage that came after was something they had not counted on. He said it surprised all of them in a good way, that people still cared enough about the character to be that angry. The team had lost track of how much the audience actually loved the dog. They had been making the show for so long and joking about the dog for so long that they had forgotten the dog was the heart of the whole thing. Executive producer Steve Callahan gave an interview to E! Online a few days after the episode aired. He explained how the decision had been made. He said the idea had been pitched in the writer's room, and the room had caught fire on the idea, and the team had thought it could be a fun way to shake things up. The phrase "fun way to shake things up" became one of the most quoted phrases of the controversy. Fans used it as evidence that the death had been a stunt. Fans used it as evidence the writers did not respect the character or the audience. Fans used it as evidence that the show had become a machine that would burn anything for attention. A second piece of evidence pointed in the same direction. The show was struggling. The ratings for the 12th season were down by about 21% compared to the year before. The number of people who watched live each week was falling. The amount of conversation around the show had been falling for years. Family Guy was no longer the cultural event it had been in the late 2000s. Killing the most beloved character was, on paper, exactly the kind of move a show makes when it needs to remind the world that it still exists. The fans saw the math. The fans were not wrong. Vinny, the new dog, lasted exactly 2 episodes. The episode after Life of Brian was called Into Harmony's Way. Vinny appeared in the episode like he had always been part of the family. He sat on the couch. He hung out with Peter. He shared scenes with Stewie. The episode pretended the new normal was the new normal. Some fans gave the new dog a chance. Some fans refused to watch at all. Some fans found Vinny charming, the same way some fans had found Brian charming back in the early days. The reviews of Into Harmony's Way were softer than the reviews of Life of Brian. The show was trying to convince the audience that the change could work. The audience was not buying it. 2 episodes after Brian's death, on December 15, 2013, Family Guy aired its Christmas episode. The episode was called Christmas Guy. Stewie went to the mall to see Santa. While he was there, he saw a younger version of himself, a Stewie from the past who still had a working time machine. The present-day Stewie sneaked the past Stewie's machine out of his bag. He used it to travel back in time to the moment Brian was hit by the car. He pushed Brian out of the way of the car a split second before the impact. The car missed Brian. Brian did not die. Stewie returned to the present. Brian was alive. The Christmas episode ended with Brian alive in the Griffin house like nothing had ever happened. Vinny was gone. The timeline had been reset. The death had been undone in a single line of dialogue. So the most painful goodbye in the history of the show, the one with the petition and the social media storm and the genuine grief from millions of viewers, lasted 21 days, from November 24th to December 15th, 3 weeks. The writers had killed Brian, watched the audience burn the internet down, replaced him with a new character nobody loved, and then quietly brought the old character back in time for the holiday special. The fans got what they wanted. The show got the buzz. Everyone went back to normal. After the resurrection, MacFarlane went to Twitter and put a final note on the whole thing. He wrote that fans should not have really thought the show would kill off Brian, and that the team would have to be high to do that. The tweet was meant as a joke, a wink to the fans who had been hurt the worst. Some fans laughed. Some fans took it as proof that the death had been a stunt all along, dragged out for ratings with the resurrection planned from the very beginning. Some fans never trusted the show in the same way again. The death had broken something in the relationship between the show and its audience that the resurrection could not fully fix. Critics caught on to this too. Screen Rant later put Life of Brian on its list of the worst Family Guy episodes ever, calling out the abruptness of the death and the awkward handling of the new dog. The Guardian pointed out that the death felt cheap because it had been pitched as a fun way to shake things up with no deeper reason behind it. Several outlets argued that the death broke the show's own rules of consequence. For 14 years, Family Guy had operated on the principle that nothing really mattered, that any character could survive any disaster, that the cartoon physics of the universe always brought everyone back at the end of the episode. By killing Brian and then resurrecting him, the show showed it had no idea which version of itself it wanted to be. It wanted the emotional weight of a real death. It also wanted the easy reset of a cartoon. It tried to have both. It got neither. The deeper criticism was about what the death said about the show's view of its own characters. The writer's room treated the most beloved member of the cast like a chess piece. They moved him off the board for ratings. They moved him back on the board when the ratings hit they wanted came in. The fact that they could do that with no real story reason told the audience something hard about what Family Guy had become. The show had spent 14 years building Brian, 14 years of arguments with Peter, 14 years of friendship with Stewie, 14 years of bad novels and failed relationships, and crying jags about politics, and small moments of being the only sane voice in a house full of madness. All of that build-up, 14 years of careful work, was thrown away in 22 minutes for a stunt that was reversed 21 days later. The character survived. The damage to the audience's faith in the show did not. Today, more than 10 years after Life of Brian aired, the episode lives in a strange place in Family Guy history. Some fans still rank it among the most emotional episodes the show ever made. Some fans still rank it among the worst episodes, for exactly the opposite reason. Tony Sirico, the actor who voiced Vinny, passed away in real life in 2022, which means even if the show wanted to bring Vinny back as a regular character, it cannot. Brian remains the family dog. The death is referenced in a few cutaways and a few lines here and there, treated mostly as a joke now, a joke about a thing that almost happened and got fixed. The show moved on. The audience mostly moved on. But the specific piece of dark side that Life of Brian opened up has stayed. The piece of dark side is the willingness to use the audience's love against them. The show learned in 2013 that it could put the audience through real grief and that the audience would come back. The show learned that pain was a tool. The show learned that the more invested fans were, the more the writers could pull on those investments to drive numbers. That lesson did not leave the writer's room. That lesson became part of how Family Guy operated for the rest of its run. Every time after that, when the show went to a dark place, fans had to wonder if the darkness was real, or if the show was running the same play again, betting on the audience caring enough to keep watching. Before we move on, subscribe if you are enjoying this breakdown. But the cruelest thing the writers ever did to one of their own characters was not the death of Brian. The cruelest thing they ever did was something quieter, 3 years before, in a bottle episode that took place inside a single bank vault where two characters sat on the floor and talked about whether life was worth living at all. This is Brian and Stewie, the bottle episode. There is one Family Guy episode that does not feel like a Family Guy episode. It has no cutaway gags. It has no flashbacks. It has no songs. It has no Peter doing something stupid in a hospital. It has no Quagmire shouting from across the street. It has no other Griffins on screen. It has no music playing under the scenes. The opening title card is removed in reruns. The end credits roll in silence. The whole episode takes place in one room with two characters talking. That is it. The show that built its identity on speed and chaos and noise stopped for one night and made an episode that was the opposite of everything it was famous for. The episode is called Brian and Stewie, and it was the 17th episode of Season 8. It aired on Fox on May 2nd, 2010. It was the 150th episode of the series, a milestone the writers had been planning for. Most shows, when they hit their 150th episode, do something big. They do a clip show. They do a guest star packed special. They do a wedding episode. Family Guy decided to do a bottle episode. A bottle episode is a kind of episode where the whole story takes place in one location with a small cast, usually because the show wants to save money or because the writers want to try something different. Family Guy's 150th episode used the budget savings to do something the show had never tried before. It made an episode about how much pain its two most popular characters were carrying around inside them. The setup was simple. Brian goes to the bank to put some money in his Christmas savings account. Stewie tags along. They go down to the safety deposit boxes in the basement. Brian opens his box. Stewie is wearing a sweater that he wants to return to the store, and the two of them argue over whether the sweater looks good. They are still arguing as Stewie walks out of the vault. The vault door swings shut behind him. The lock catches. They are trapped inside. The bank is closed for the weekend. Nobody is coming to let them out for 2 days. The first part of the episode plays like a Family Guy episode. Stewie has an accident in his diaper. He cannot reach to clean himself. He convinces Brian to do it for him. The scene is gross in the way Family Guy is gross. The Parents Television Council, the watchdog group that had been complaining about the show for over a decade, filed an official complaint with the FCC over the bathroom content. The president of the council, a man named Tim Winter, said it seemed as though Seth MacFarlane had carefully reviewed the legal definition of broadcast indecency and set out to violate it as literally as he could. The complaint went nowhere. The episode aired uncut on DVD. The bathroom scenes were the show's way of telling the audience at the start of the episode that this was still going to be Family Guy, even if something else was coming. Something else came. After the gross scenes, the two of them sat down on the floor of the vault to wait. Brian opened a bottle of scotch he had been keeping in his deposit box. The bottle was a 12-year-old single malt. He started drinking. He offered some to Stewie. Stewie drank with him. The two of them got drunk together in a locked vault in the basement of a closed bank, and once they were drunk, the conversation got real. They started talking about whether dogs have a purpose. Brian said dogs do have a purpose. They protect their owners. They run with their owners. They have a job. Stewie pushed back. Stewie said Brian was an exception. Stewie said Brian had no purpose. Stewie said Brian was just a thing in the house that talked sometimes. The argument got mean. Stewie admitted that he had not actually needed Brian to clean his diaper, that he could have gone all day without it, and that he had only made Brian do it to see how low Brian would go for him. Brian got angry. Brian pulled out a gun. Stewie had not known there was a gun in the deposit box. He pointed at it. He asked why Brian had a gun. He said Brian was a gun control supporter. He reminded Brian that Brian had cried after the Columbine school shooting. He said Brian was the last person on earth he would expect to own a gun. Brian tried to deflect. Brian said it was nothing. Brian said the gun was just there, that it had come with the box. Stewie kept asking. Stewie pushed and pushed. Brian finally answered. Brian said he kept the gun in case he ever wanted to end his own life. The episode stopped. The music, which had not really been there to begin with, stayed gone. The room stayed quiet. Stewie said the words, "My God, you are serious." He asked why. Brian tried to wave it off. Brian said Stewie was just a kid, that Stewie would not understand. Stewie said he could try. Brian opened up. Brian said sometimes life was too much. Brian said everything was too much. Brian said the day before, when Stewie had told him he had no purpose, Stewie had been right. Brian said he did not know what his purpose was. Brian said the gun was a comfort. Brian said just knowing the gun was there, knowing there was a way out if he ever needed it, helped him get through. Brian said the bottle of scotch in the box was supposed to be his last drink when the time came. Stewie sat there and listened. Stewie was a baby. Stewie was the kind of character who built death rays and time machines and tried to take over the world. Stewie was supposed to be the funny one. The episode put him in front of an honest answer about why a person, or in this case a dog, might want to stop being alive, and the show let him sit with it. There was no cutaway. There was no Peter walking in and breaking the moment. There was no joke to release the tension. The two of them stayed in the vault, drunk, with a loaded gun on the floor, and they talked. Stewie said he understood, sort of. Stewie said he did not have many friends. Stewie said the kids at his daycare did not understand him. Stewie said his family did not understand him. Stewie said Brian was the only one who did. Then Stewie said the line the episode had been moving toward the whole time. Stewie said he loved Brian, not in the way grown-ups loved each other, not in any way Stewie really had words for. Stewie said he loved Brian the way one loves another person whom one simply cannot do without. Stewie said Brian gave his life purpose. Stewie said maybe that was enough. Stewie said maybe that was just about the greatest gift one friend could give another. Brian said he loved Stewie too. They fell asleep on the floor of the vault. The bank opened on Monday. Someone unlocked the door. Brian carried Stewie out in his arms. The episode ended. There are very few moments in the entire run of Family Guy that have stayed with fans the way this scene has. The show that had spent 8 seasons building a reputation for being the loudest, fastest, most cynical cartoon on television had stopped for half an hour and let 2 of its characters tell each other that they were holding each other up. The character who voiced both of them, Seth MacFarlane, was the only voice actor in the entire episode. Every line of dialogue, both sides of the conversation, was him talking to himself. He was sitting alone in a recording booth, voicing a depressed dog and a lonely baby, having a conversation about whether life was worth living. The episode was an act of self-examination from a man who had nearly died on a hijacked plane 9 years earlier, and who had spent every year since making a cartoon about everything except what that day had done to him. Critics noticed. Eric Thurm of the AV Club gave the episode a grade of A-. He called the scene where Brian admits to the gun actually pretty poignant, coming as close as Family Guy could come to genuinely moving. Adam Rosenberg of MTV said that beneath the disturbing parts of the episode, there was actually some thoughtful, mature discussion of what love means in the middle of it. Jason Hughes of TV Squad said he had not laughed much during Brian and Stewie, but that he had been absolutely captured by their conversation. Tom Eames of Digital Spy ranked the episode at number 7 on his list of the best Family Guy episodes ever made. Even critics who disliked Family Guy generally admitted that this one episode had done something the show was not supposed to be capable of. The fans split. Some fans hated the episode. They had tuned in for a comedy and gotten a half hour where Brian almost sobbed about wanting to die. Some fans called it the worst Family Guy episode ever, not because it was offensive, but because it was not funny. Some fans loved it for the same reason. Some fans wrote to the show afterward and said the episode had helped them. Some fans said they had been in a dark place themselves, and that watching Brian and Stewie talk had made them feel less alone. The episode's effect was bigger than its ratings. The episode was a private moment that millions of people watched in their living rooms. What makes Brian and Stewie a permanent piece of the dark side of Family Guy is what it shows about the show. The show could do this. The show could sit still, take its biggest characters, lock them in a room, give them no jokes to hide behind, and write a real conversation about pain. The show had the talent. The show had the writing chops. The show had the actor. The show had everything it needed to be a different kind of show, a show that could move between dumb cartoon comedy and genuine emotional honesty in the same season. The show chose, for 150 episodes before this one and 300 more episodes after this one, to mostly not be that show. The show chose the cutaways. The show chose the noise. The show chose the easy laughs. Brian and Stewie was the show admitting, for one Sunday night, that there was a heart underneath all the chaos. The next week, the heart went back in the box. The cutaways came back. Peter falling downstairs came back. Quagmire shouting came back. The show went back to being Family Guy the way it had been before. The vault scene was filed away as a one-off experiment. It was put on the box set. It was talked about by critics. It was forgotten by most viewers. The show had shown what it could be. The show had decided what it was going to be. Those were not the same thing. Brian's gun stayed in the deposit box, story-wise. The show never went back to the gun. The show never followed up on the conversation. Brian never had another moment where he talked about wanting to die. The next time Brian had a serious health scare on the show was 3 years later when he got hit by the car in Life of Brian, and that storyline had nothing to do with this one. The vault conversation was a self-contained piece. The writers had said the thing once. The writers did not say it again. There is a quiet honesty in that. Real despair does not get fixed by one good conversation. Brian could have told Stewie everything in that vault and still kept the gun. Stewie could have meant every word he said about love and purpose and still not been enough to chase the dark feeling out of Brian's head forever. The show, by refusing to follow up on the conversation, accidentally got something right about depression that more careful shows often get wrong. The dark feeling does not disappear. It sits in a deposit box in a basement somewhere, and a person walks past the bank every day, and the person knows the box is there, and the person finds a strange comfort in knowing it is there, and the person keeps living anyway. Take a second to subscribe before we continue, if this is worth your while. There is a different kind of dark side, though. The kind where the show takes a real subject, the kind where real people get hurt every day in the real world, and tries to wring it for a laugh, only to land somewhere none of the writers had planned to land. That kind of dark side surfaced in 2011 in a Halloween episode where Family Guy tried to make a comedy about what happens to a woman trapped with a man who beats her. The episode tried to be funny. The episode tried to be heartwarming. The episode ended with a murder. This is Screams of Silence, when murder becomes the punchline. Halloween of 2011 fell on a Monday. The night before, on Sunday, October 30th, Family Guy aired its Halloween-themed episode for the season. The episode was the third episode of Season 10, the 168th episode of the show overall. It was written by one of the show's main writers, an executive producer named Alex Sulkin, who had also written the Star Wars parody Blue Harvest and other big swings the show had taken over the years. The episode was directed by Dominic Bianchi, the same man who had directed the 150th episode, the bottle episode about Brian's gun. The two of them had built reputations as the team that could handle Family Guy's most serious material, the team that could find the moments inside the noise. The episode they made together that Halloween was called Screams of Silence, the story of Brenda Q. The title itself was a tip-off. The episode was structured like a serious drama. The story did not center on Peter or on Stewie or on Brian or even on Quagmire, who had been the closest thing to a main character the previous season had given. The story centered on a woman named Brenda. Brenda was Quagmire's sister. Family Guy fans had seen her once before in an episode called Quagmire's Baby, where she had a small role. This time, she was the heart of the story. She was being beaten by her boyfriend, and the episode was going to follow what happened to her. The actress voicing Brenda was Caitlin Olsen, who fans knew from the FX comedy It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. She was the second cast member from that show to do a voice on a Seth MacFarlane series after Glenn Howerton on The Cleveland Show. Olsen played Brenda quietly, without trying to make her funny. The episode opened with the men of Spooner Street. Peter, Joe, and Quagmire were planning a fishing trip together. Quagmire did not show up. Peter and Joe went to his house to find him. They found him unconscious in his closet, his face turning blue. He was not trying to end his life. He was doing something the show had referenced about his character before, a dangerous habit involving cutting off his own breathing for a thrill. The two of them got him down and rushed him to the hospital. He was in a coma. The doctors did not know if he would wake up. His sister Brenda came to visit him at the hospital. She brought her boyfriend with her. The boyfriend's name was Jeff. Jeff was loud. Jeff was rude. Jeff barked orders at Brenda. Jeff ignored Quagmire in the hospital bed. Jeff treated everyone in the room like he owned them. The way the show drew, Jeff was not played for laughs. He was tall. He was angry. He filled the screen. The voice actor, Ralph Garman, played him as a regular, ugly, controlling man, not a cartoon villain, a normal, real, frightening man. Brenda was scared of him. Anyone who had ever known a person like Jeff in real life understood within 30 seconds of him appearing on screen. The way Brenda flinched when he raised his voice, the way she said yes to whatever he wanted, the way she made excuses for him whenever he did something cruel, the way she tried to laugh off his behavior so the people around her would not get involved. The episode did not need to spell out what was happening. The animation said it. The voice acting said it. The room around them said it. Quagmire woke up from his coma. He saw Jeff. He saw how Brenda looked when Jeff was nearby. He understood. He went to Lois and asked her for help. He asked Lois to talk to Brenda woman to woman. He thought Brenda might listen to another woman. Lois agreed. She took Brenda out to lunch. The two of them sat at a table. Lois asked Brenda to take off her sunglasses. Brenda did not want to. Lois pushed. Brenda finally took them off. There was a black bruise under her eye. Lois said the things people are supposed to say in that moment. She said Brenda did not deserve this. She said Brenda needed to leave him. Brenda did what people often do in real life when someone tries to help them out of an abusive relationship. She defended him. She said it was complicated. She said Jeff was not always like this. She said Lois did not understand. She finished her lunch. She put her sunglasses back on. She went home to him. Joe joined the next part. As a police officer, Joe should have been the answer to a problem like Jeff. The episode pointed out, accurately, that the police could not do anything unless Brenda filed a complaint herself. Joe explained the law. The men sat around the bar frustrated. The system, the show was saying, did not work. The system needed Brenda to save herself, and Brenda was too scared and too trapped to save herself. The men needed another plan. Quagmire decided to throw an intervention. He gathered the family and a few neighbors. They sat Brenda down in a circle. They told her, one at a time, that they loved her and that they were scared for her and that she needed to leave. The intervention was the kind of thing the show could have played for laughs in any other episode. Cutaways would have run during the speeches. Peter would have said something dumb. Brian would have made a joke about feelings. None of that happened. The intervention played straight. People spoke. Brenda listened. For a moment, it looked like it might work. Quagmire and Brenda hugged. Brenda agreed to leave Jeff. Then Jeff walked into the room. He had figured out what was happening. He came in and told Brenda to come home. Quagmire told him to leave. Brenda froze. She started to step toward Quagmire. Jeff watched her. Brenda stopped. Brenda turned around. Brenda told the room that she could not leave. Brenda said she and Jeff were engaged. Brenda said she was pregnant. Jeff smiled. He had won. He took her out of the house, and the door closed behind them. The episode had now backed itself into the corner that real abusive relationships back people into in real life. The system did not work. Talking did not work. The intervention did not work. The woman everyone wanted to save kept choosing the man who hurt her because the man had built a cage in her head that was stronger than any cage a friend could open. The show, having walked all the way to that corner, had to figure out how to end the story. The show chose murder. Peter, Joe, and Quagmire sat at the bar that night. They talked about killing Jeff. They said it was the only way. They said men like Jeff did not change. Joe, the police officer, the man whose job was supposed to be the law, said he would help. They watched Jeff slap Brenda for changing the channel on Quagmire's television. That was the moment that flipped Joe. They came up with a plan. They invited Jeff on a hunting trip. They drove him out into the woods. They were going to kill him out there and make it look like an accident. Jeff had been ahead of them the whole time. He pulled his own gun. He knocked Peter and Joe unconscious. He took Quagmire deeper into the woods. He told Quagmire he was going to kill him. The two of them fought. Jeff started strangling Quagmire. Peter got back to the truck. Peter started the engine. The headlights came on. Jeff turned. Quagmire was alive behind the wheel. Quagmire had escaped. Peter and Quagmire drove the truck straight into Jeff at full speed. Jeff was crushed against a tree. Jeff died. The three men buried him. The three men drove home. The next morning, they sat with Brenda. They told her they had a note from Jeff. The note said Jeff had decided to leave her. The note was forged. They handed it to her. Brenda read it. Brenda cried. Brenda thanked them for being there for her. The episode ended. The reviews came in the next morning and the morning after that. They were brutal in a way Family Guy reviews almost never were. Whitney Jefferson at the website Jezebel called the episode the scariest Halloween special she had ever seen. She said the show had hit a horrible new low. She said the storyline involving Brenda and Jeff was something she could not laugh at, even from a show she had stopped watching for being too crude. A. Jamie of Showbiz Tonight, who covered entertainment for HLN, said he was just shocked by what he had seen on Family Guy. He called it really just a depressing half-hour of television. The website Media Eat ran a piece asking whether the episode was funny or whether it died. The conversation that followed was not the kind of fan argument that usually surrounded Family Guy episodes, where one group thought it was hilarious and another group thought it was offensive. The conversation was darker than that. It was about whether the show should have made the episode at all. The deepest criticism was about the ending. The show had taken a serious topic, set up a serious story, written a serious portrait of a woman trapped with a man who hurt her, and then resolved the story by having three of its main characters drive a truck into the man and bury him in the woods. The message of the episode, taken at face value, was that domestic violence has only one solution, and that solution is to kill the man. The episode did not show Brenda finding the strength to leave. The episode did not show the legal system working. The episode did not show a shelter or a hotline or a community of women helping each other survive. The episode showed three men with a truck. The episode showed a body in the dirt. The episode showed a forged note and a relieved sister and a credit sequence. There is a real harm in that ending. Real women die every year because real men decide that the only way to handle their wives or girlfriends is to use violence. Real men go to prison for the rest of their lives because they think the only way to handle other men is to kill them. The episode dressed up that fantasy in a bright cartoon and ran it through prime time on Fox. The episode treated the fantasy as a happy ending. The episode showed Brenda crying with relief at a forged note. The episode did not pause to ask whether a woman who had spent years being controlled by one man was now safer being lied to by three men, even if the three men were her brother and his friends and a police officer. The show had been a lot of things by 2011. It had been a comedy about a fat dad. It had been a parody machine. It had been a cutaway factory. It had been a satire of bad television. The show had not really been a vigilante drama. The show had not really been the kind of cartoon where main characters made a plan to murder a man, and the show treated the plan as the right call. Screams of Silence put the show in that role for one episode, and the show pulled the trigger. What the episode revealed about Family Guy is something the show would rather not say about itself. The show, when faced with a real, hard, unfixable problem in real life, did not have the patience to sit with the unfixable part. The show needed an ending. The show needed a clean shot of three men at the bar feeling good about themselves. The show needed a hug between siblings. The show needed Brenda to be saved on screen by the end of the runtime. The show could not look at a woman trapped in a violent home and say honestly, on television, that some women never get out, that some women die in those homes, that some men keep doing it for years and never face consequences. The show was not built for that kind of honesty. The show was built for endings. The show invented an ending. The ending was a body in the woods. Seth MacFarlane has not said much publicly about Screams of Silence in the years since. The episode is not on the lists of his favorites. The episode is not in the highlight reels. The episode lives quietly in the Season 10 box set, available on streaming, watched mostly by fans working their way through the run in order. Some fans defend it as the show trying to do something serious. Some fans rank it among the worst things the show ever made. Most fans, if asked to name a controversial Family Guy episode, name something else first. If you are enjoying the breakdown, a subscribe helps before we continue. The episode that left a deeper mark on the show's relationship with its female characters was not really Screams of Silence anyway. That episode was about a guest character. The audience could be sad about Brenda, then forget her, the way the show forgot her after the episode ended. The deeper damage was being done quietly every week to one of the Griffins themselves, to the daughter, to the girl whose family had been treating her as a punching bag for over a decade. And in the very next episode of Season 10, exactly 1 week before Screams of Silence aired, the show had finally let her speak. This is Meg, the lightning rod, and the week the show confessed. There are a lot of running jokes on Family Guy. Peter being fat, Quagmire being a creep, Brian dating women way too young for him, Stewie talking like a British scientist, Cleveland being calm, Joe yelling, Lois being annoyed. Most of these jokes are the kind that come and go. The show uses them when it needs them. The show drops them when it does not. None of them have lasted across the whole run of the show in a way that defines who the character is. There is one running joke that has lasted. There is one joke that has been there from the very first episode in 1999 to the season's airing today. There is one joke the show keeps coming back to in almost every episode, in cutaways and in main plots, in Season 1 and in Season 20. That joke is that the family hates Meg. Meg is the oldest Griffin child. She is the daughter. She is a teenager for almost the entire run of the show, frozen at 16 years old for over 20 real-life years. Her voice has been done by Mila Kunis since the second season, after the original voice actress Lacey Chabert left after Season 1. Meg is supposed to be a regular teenage girl. She is supposed to be the family member the audience can relate to, the girl who goes to school, has crushes, fights with her mom, tries out for the cheerleading team, wants a boyfriend. Every other family sitcom in television history has a daughter like Meg, and every other show treats that daughter like a real character. Family Guy treats Meg like a piece of furniture the rest of the family is allowed to break. The list of things the show has done to Meg over the years is long. Peter has called her ugly to her face hundreds of times. Peter has passed gas on her, shoved her, locked her in the basement, sold her, traded her, ignored her, and openly said he wished she had never been born. Lois has told Meg she is a mistake. Lois has told Meg she does not love her. Lois has prioritized every other member of the family over her in every kind of crisis. Chris has bullied her constantly. Stewie has made fun of her face, her weight, her voice, her clothes, and every other thing about her. Brian, who is supposed to be the kindest member of the family, has slept with her twice in storylines the show treated as light comedy. The neighbors have called her ugly. The boys at school have called her ugly. Total strangers in random cutaways have called her ugly. There is an entire fan compilation video, hours long, of nothing but moments where the show insults Meg. For more than a decade, this was not even controversial. Fans laughed at the Meg jokes. Fans wore shirts that said, "Shut up, Meg." Fans considered Meg the funniest part of the show because her job in every episode was to absorb whatever cruelty the writers wanted to send her way. The character had no real arc. The character had no real growth. The character existed to be the place all the negative energy in the Griffin family went. If Peter was angry, Peter took it out on Meg. If Lois was sad, Lois took it out on Meg. If Chris was bored, Chris took it out on Meg. The family functioned because Meg sat at the bottom of the family and absorbed every blow. The show built that into its skeleton. On October 2nd, 2011, Family Guy did something it had never done before. The show made an episode that admitted on screen that this was what it had been doing. The episode was called Seahorse Seashell Party. It was the second episode of Season 10, the 167th episode of the show overall. It aired the week before Screams of Silence. It was part of a 3-show crossover called Night of the Hurricane, where Family Guy, American Dad, and The Cleveland Show all had storylines about the same hurricane hitting their neighborhoods on the same night. Seth MacFarlane had announced the crossover at the San Diego Comic-Con the year before. The hurricane shut down the Griffin house. The family was trapped inside together. The plot would force them to deal with each other with no escape for a full episode. There was a side plot in the episode where Brian, bored from being trapped, took psychedelic mushrooms and had a long bad trip. The Brian plot was the kind of crude, weird stuff Family Guy did all the time. Brian hallucinated that the family was monstrous. Brian cut off his own ear with scissors. The animation of the trip was unsettling on purpose. Stewie spent the trip taking care of him. The Brian story was meant to fill the runtime around the main plot. The main plot was something else. The main plot was Meg. The Griffins were stuck in the living room. They were trying to pass the time by playing charades. They were getting on each other's nerves. Peter started humming a song over and over. Meg opened a can of soda. The pop of the can made Peter turn and snap at her. He yelled at her to stop. Meg looked at him. Meg looked at her family. And Meg, for the first time in 12 years on television, snapped back. She turned to Chris first. She told him every way he had failed her as a brother. She told him he had never once defended her against their parents. She told him he was a coward and a follower and a person who watched bad things happen to his sister and pretended he was not seeing them. Chris tried to brush it off. Meg kept going. She turned to Lois next. This was the part of the speech that had the most weight, because Lois had spent the show's entire run pretending she was a good mother. Meg told her she was not. Meg listed Lois's history. Meg called her a shoplifter. Meg called her a drug user. Meg called her a former adult film performer. Meg listed by name the men Lois had cheated on Peter with. Meg said Lois had spent her whole life acting like she was better than her own daughter while doing every irresponsible thing a person could do. Meg said when she turned 18 in 2 more years, she might walk out of the family forever and never come back. She said it calmly. She said it like she meant it. Lois started crying. She turned to Peter last. Peter tried to laugh. Peter tried to make a joke. Meg told him his children were a disaster because of him. She told him he was a failed father. She told him every kid he had raised was broken in some way, and that all of it traced back to him. Peter, on screen, started crying too. Peter went upstairs. Lois went after him to comfort him. Then Lois turned on him too, because he had not stood up for her during Meg's speech. Then Peter and Lois turned on each other. Then Chris turned on both of them. The whole family fell apart in the living room. Meg sat on the couch and watched it happen. The dysfunction the family had been hiding behind cutaways and noise for over a decade came out into the open. They could not be in a room together for 15 minutes without ripping each other apart once Meg stopped being there to absorb it for them. Then, the writers made a choice critics have been arguing about ever since. Meg, having watched her family destroy each other, thought about what she had done. She decided the family needed a lightning rod. She decided that if the family did not have someone to take all their pain out on, the family would not survive. She decided her purpose was to be that someone. She walked back into the room. She apologized for snapping. She told her family she had been wrong to call them out. She offered to take all their pain back onto her. The family, relieved, accepted her apology. They went back to insulting her. The world reset. The episode ended. There is a coda. After that, the family went outside thinking the storm had passed. They realized they were in the eye of the hurricane. They rushed back into the house. They locked the door behind them with Meg still outside, hoping the second half of the storm would harm her. The episode used that as the joke of the closing credits. The lightning rod, the show was saying, never gets to come inside. The reviews were not kind. Kevin McFarland of the AV Club gave the episode a D+. He wrote that nobody cared about any member of the Griffin family the way audiences cared about every last Simpson, and that the show, this far into its run, could not pivot to dramatic emotional payoffs and expect them to land. He pointed out that Meg had become the family scapegoat, not because the writers had carefully built her up that way, but because the writers had spent years going down the path of least resistance and joining the fan chorus of hating her. He wrote that one episode of pointed force justification for years of cruelty did not change a thing. The biggest problem with the episode was the ending. Meg apologized. Meg accepted the role of the family punching bag. Meg told her abusers in plain language that they were too weak to handle their own lives without her there to soak up their pain, and that she would carry that for them. The show framed this as a heroic sacrifice. The show framed it as Meg understanding her family. The show framed it as a happy ending. People who study real abuse looked at the episode and said the show had described, with frightening accuracy, the way real abuse works, the way the abuser cannot function without the victim, the way the victim is told it is her job to keep the family together by accepting her own mistreatment, the way the victim sometimes believes it, the way the victim sometimes goes back. Family Guy had described that pattern out loud in front of millions of viewers, and then ended the episode by telling its audience that this was the right outcome, that Meg should stay, that the family needed her to stay, that her function in life was to be the place the violence landed. There was a moment in the episode where Meg broke the fourth wall. She turned to the camera. She pointed out that if Family Guy were a real show about a real family, Peter would have been arrested for child abuse a long time ago. The line was meant as a joke. The joke landed harder than the writers seemed to know. The line was a confession. The line was the show admitting, in front of its audience, that it had been animating things that in any other format would have looked like a documentary about a violent home. The cartoon style had been the cover. The yellow body, the round head, the cute drawings of Meg getting hurt and yelled at and ignored, all of it had let the show get away with showing things on television that the country would never accept on a live-action drama. What Seahorse Seashell Party did was strip the cover off for one episode and then quickly nail it back down before the credits rolled. The show showed everyone what was underneath. The show then asked the audience to forget what they had just seen. The show went back to the regular Meg jokes the next week. By season 11, the episode was being mocked by the show itself in cutaways. By season 15, it was barely referenced. By the seasons airing today, Meg is treated the same way she was treated in season 1. The audience watching live now, the kids who started Family Guy on Hulu in the last few years, have no idea this episode even exists. They see Meg get yelled at and called ugly and absorb their parents' anger every Sunday, and they think that is just the way the show is. The dark side that Seahorse Seashell Party reveals is not really about Meg as a character. The dark side is about what the show has been training its audience to find funny for over 20 years. Hundreds of millions of people have watched a teenage daughter get psychologically and emotionally beaten down for 2 decades and laughed at it. The episode showed, for one Sunday night, what the joke really was. The episode then taught the audience, in its closing minutes, that the joke was actually fine. The audience absorbed the lesson. The audience kept laughing. Meg has stayed at the bottom of the family. Meg has stayed the lightning rod. The show has stayed the show. There is a strange detail about Meg that fans of the show have noticed over the years, a piece of behind-the-scenes information that takes the whole pattern from sad to almost unbearable. The character was supposed to be voiced by Lacey Chabert in the first season. Lacey Chabert was a real teenage girl when she did the voice. She had to read scripts where her character was insulted in graphic ways. There are stories about how the experience of voicing Meg, of sitting in a booth being called those things every week, was part of why she eventually left the show. The girl behind the voice felt some of the same weight that the character on screen kept being asked to carry. The show absorbed her exit and moved on. Coonies took over. The cruelty did not stop. Take a moment to subscribe before we move on if this is landing for you. What none of this prepared the audience for was the moment when the show stopped pretending its sense of humor about real-life predators was just a joke. The moment came in 2017. The moment had been hiding in a cutaway from 12 years earlier. The moment was about a basement, an actor, and a baby running through a shopping mall. This is the story of the Spacey and Weinstein predictions, when the show knew before the world did. In the spring of 2005, Family Guy was running its fourth season, the first season after the show's long cancellation, the season that proved the show belonged back on television. Season 4 was full of moments fans still quote today: the Stewie songs, the Brian crying scenes, the Peter and the chicken fight that lasted a full 5 minutes of episode time. The cutaways were sharper than they had ever been. The writers were trying to prove they still had the show in them. In one of those episodes, a cutaway happened that lasted about 6 seconds. A baby, completely naked, ran through the middle of a shopping mall. He was crying. He was scared. He was waving his arms. He looked directly at the camera and yelled the line that would change the meaning of the cutaway 12 years later. He yelled, "Help me! I have escaped from Kevin Spacey's basement." The screen flashed back to the main story. Peter said something dumb. The episode kept going. The line was not based on any specific public accusation against Kevin Spacey. There was no court case. There was no lawsuit. There was no news story for fans to reference. Spacey in 2005 was one of the most respected actors in the world. He had 2 Academy Awards. He was running the Old Vic Theatre in London. He was the kind of A-list celebrity that other celebrities looked up to. Why a Family Guy writer in 2005 thought it was funny to make a joke about a child being held in his basement was a question almost nobody asked at the time. The cutaway aired. Some fans laughed. Most fans forgot it ever existed. The episode went into the box set, into the rerun rotation, into the back catalog of hundreds of small Family Guy moments that nobody really thought about again. 12 years passed. In October of 2017, the actor Anthony Rapp gave an interview to the website BuzzFeed. Rapp told the story of being 14 years old and meeting Kevin Spacey at a party in 1986. Rapp said that Spacey, who had been 26 at the time, had picked him up, carried him to a bedroom, and laid on top of him. Rapp said Spacey had been drinking. Rapp said he had managed to wriggle out from under him and leave. Rapp had carried the memory for over 30 years. He decided, in the wake of the Harvey Weinstein news that was breaking that same month, that it was time to say it out loud. The story ran on BuzzFeed on October 29, 2017. Within 48 hours, the Kevin Spacey cutaway from 2005 was everywhere on the internet. A Twitter user named Josh Jordan posted the clip on October 30th. The post said, "Family Guy with the Kevin Spacey reference 12 years ago, creepy." The clip went viral fast. People who had laughed at it in 2005 were now staring at it in 2017 and asking the same question. How did a writer's room in 2005 think this was a joke? How did a writer's room in 2005 know to put the words Spacey, basement, child, escape, and help into the same sentence and treat the result as a punchline. The answer, when it came, was uncomfortable. Seth MacFarlane spoke about it the following January at the Television Critics Association press tour, where he was promoting another show. A reporter asked him directly. He answered honestly. He said he himself had not heard the rumor when the joke was pitched. He said other people in the room had heard it. He said the rumor had to be explained to him in the moment. He said the writers' room had heard things the way Hollywood writers' rooms hear things, through whisper networks and industry parties, and the kind of off-the-record conversations that nobody puts in print. He said that when a rumor was widely enough known among industry people, the network's standards department would let the joke through, because the lawyers could argue the joke was about a thing already being said, even if the public did not know yet. The Spacey cutaway, MacFarlane explained, had been written because the writers' room already knew. The writers' room had been hearing the rumors for years. The cutaway was a wink at the people inside the industry who already understood. The audience watching at home in 2005 had been the only people in the dark. Executive producer Alex Sulkin, who had been in the room when the joke was pitched, gave his own version a few months after the clip went viral. He told reporters that the joke had come up because Spacey had been involved in some incident in London where he had claimed to be walking his dog late at night and had fallen and gotten injured. The story had raised eyebrows in the industry. The whisper networks had filled in the rest. Sulkin said the line about the basement was the writer's way of telling the rumors out loud in a form vague enough that the network could allow it to air. That answer is the reason the Spacey cutaway is part of the dark side of Family Guy. The dark side is not that the joke turned out to be true. The dark side is that the show knew. The show knew in 2005. The writers' room knew. The producers knew. The standards department at the network knew well enough to let the joke air. Hollywood as a whole knew. People at the top of the entertainment industry had been talking about Kevin Spacey for years, in private, while the public watched him win awards and play presidents and run famous theaters. The cutaway was an in-joke for the people in the know. The people in the know watched the cutaway, smiled, and said nothing publicly. Children kept being put in front of him. Young actors kept working with him. 12 years went by. Anthony Rapp finally spoke. The cutaway became a clip nobody could unsee. The Spacey moment was not even the only one. There was a second one, a bigger one. On January 10, 2013, Seth MacFarlane stood on a stage in Los Angeles at the Samuel Goldwyn Theater. He was there to announce the nominations for the next year's Academy Awards. He was sharing the stage with the actress Emma Stone. The two of them were running through the categories together, reading nominees, joking lightly between announcements. They got to the Best Supporting Actress category. The 5 nominees were Sally Field, Anne Hathaway, Helen Hunt, Amy Adams, and Jackie Weaver. After they had read the names, MacFarlane looked at the audience. He delivered the line. He said, "Congratulations, you 5 ladies no longer have to pretend to be attracted to Harvey Weinstein." The audience in the theater laughed nervously. The line had been a joke about Hollywood's open secret. Harvey Weinstein, the most powerful film producer in the industry, the man who could make or break an Oscar campaign, had a reputation for using that power against women. The reputation had been whispered about in industry circles for decades. Actresses had warned each other. Agents had warned their clients. Magazines had run hint pieces. Nobody had said it directly, on a public stage, in front of cameras, with Weinstein's name attached, as a joke meant to be heard. MacFarlane said it on the morning he was helping launch the Oscar season. He said it about the man who controlled the Oscar season. He said it on tape that played on every entertainment news show in America that day. The joke was reported. The joke was passed around. The joke was, for the most part, treated as edgy MacFarlane being edgy MacFarlane. Weinstein himself, by all accounts, was angry, but did not retaliate publicly. He continued running his company. He continued attending the awards. He continued doing what he had been doing for decades. The joke aired. The world moved on. Most people forgot it. In October of 2017, the New York Times and the New Yorker ran the stories that ended Harvey Weinstein. Dozens of women came forward over the next weeks and months. The stories described decades of harassment, assault, and abuse. The phrase "Me Too," which had existed for years thanks to the activist Tarana Burke, became a worldwide movement overnight. Hollywood faced the kind of public reckoning it had never faced before. Powerful men across industries lost their jobs. Some of them lost their careers. Some of them went to prison. In the middle of that reckoning, McFarlane's 2013 Oscar joke resurfaced. People dug up the clip. People posted it next to the Spacey cutaway. The pattern was now obvious. The show and the man behind the show had been making jokes about specific real predators years before the public knew the men were predators. The jokes had been small. The jokes had been buried inside other things. But the jokes had been there. McFarlane spoke about the Weinstein joke a few weeks after the news broke. He said something that put the moment in a different light. He said he had not made the joke as a piece of clever industry insider humor. He said he had made the joke because his close friend, the actress Jessica Barth, had told him personally about an experience she had with Weinstein. He said she had been the one who confided in him. He said the joke was his way of standing up for her. He said the joke had come from a place of loathing and anger. He said there was nothing more abhorrent and indefensible than the abuse of power Weinstein had been using. He said the moment had been a quiet attempt to push back at a man he could not push back at directly. That answer changes the meaning of the joke. The joke was not a comedian playing with industry rumors for laughs. The joke was a man speaking in code, on the biggest stage he could find, about something his friend had told him. The joke was the smallest, most public thing he could do without naming Weinstein outright. The joke was a man trying to put the words on tape on the morning of the Oscar nominations, so that someday, if the truth came out, the words would already be there. The truth came out. The words were already there. People found them. Family Guy, by 2018, was running its 16th season. The Emmy campaign for the season was the one the show would be remembered for. Every year, networks send screening DVDs and promotional mailers to Emmy voters, trying to remind them that a particular show deserves nominations. Family Guy's mailer for 2018 took the show's sudden reputation as a predictor of Hollywood predators and ran with it. The cover of the mailer showed Peter Griffin standing in front of the Hollywood sign. The text on the cover read, "We predicted Kevin Spacey and Harvey Weinstein. Open DVD to see who's next." Voters opened the case. There was no DVD inside. There was a mirror. The mirror reflected the voter's own face back at them. The message was direct. The mailer was telling every Emmy voter, every Hollywood power player who received it, that the next person to be exposed could be them. The mailer was telling the industry that Family Guy had spent years naming its predators in code, and that the same predators were in the room, and that the show was watching. The mailer was a joke. The mailer was also a warning. Some voters were amused. Some voters were not. The Hollywood Reporter and Deadline both ran the story when the mailers went out. What the Spacey and Weinstein moments reveal about Family Guy is something the show is uncomfortable being praised for. The show is not a piece of magic. The show is not a piece of supernatural prediction. The show does not know the future. What the show is, and what the moments show, is that an entire industry was filled with people who knew about specific bad men for years and did nothing about it publicly. Family Guy was one of the few places where the things being said in private rooms ended up on public airwaves, even in code, even in cutaways, even in jokes that nobody noticed at the time. Most of Hollywood was complicit. The whisper networks stayed whisper networks. The show, in its small way, leaked the whispers. The whispers were not loud enough to save anyone. The whispers were loud enough to make people uncomfortable years later, when the truth caught up. Seth MacFarlane has tried to push back in interviews against the idea that the show is a predictor of scandals. He has called the idea sensationalized. He has said the show writes the same kind of topical jokes other shows like The Simpsons and South Park have always written. He has said the modern media culture, where being first matters more than being right, has built up the show's reputation as a magic 8-ball, when the truth is much smaller and sadder than that. The truth is just that bad people had been bad for a long time, and a few people in writers' rooms heard about it, and the only place the writers could put what they heard was inside a cartoon nobody took seriously. The cartoon kept going. The cartoon kept making cutaways. Some of them were silly. Some of them were dark. Some of them, the audience now knows, were small reports from inside an industry full of secrets, smuggled out one joke at a time. Do subscribe before the next one, if this has been worthwhile. Across the same years that Family Guy was making those jokes, the show was also doing something else nobody talked about openly. The show was building a recurring character, a regular fixture in the neighborhood, a man the audience saw in dozens of episodes, a man drawn to be sweet and funny and old, a man whose entire joke, for the run of the show, is that he wants to prey on a teenage boy who lives across the street. The audience laughs. The man keeps appearing. He has been appearing for over 20 years. His name is Herbert. This is the story of Herbert, the predator the audience loves. The character first appeared in the spring of 2001 in the 12th episode of Season 3. The episode was called To Love and Die in Dixie. The Griffin family was hiding from the law in the South. Chris was riding his bike around a small southern neighborhood. He passed the porch of an elderly man. The old man was sitting in a rocking chair, wearing a baby blue robe and slippers, leaning on a metal walker. The man looked up at Chris. The man smiled. The man said, in a soft southern voice with a slight whistle in it, that he had a popsicle inside if Chris wanted to come into the house and have one. Chris said no. The bike kept going. The screen flashed back to the main story. The cutaway was about 30 seconds long. The audience saw it once. The character had no name on screen. The character had no follow-up in the episode. He was a one-off joke, the way Family Guy had thousands of one-off jokes by then. The audience registered the soft voice and the obvious bad intention and moved on. The character did not stay a one-off. The writers brought him back. They named him Herbert. They gave him an old dog named Jesse who could barely walk. They made him the Griffin's next-door neighbor in Quahog, even though he had originally appeared in a southern town in a different episode, because nothing about Family Guy continuity has ever been strict. They gave him scenes. They gave him whole storylines. They put him on the cover of merchandise. They built him into one of the most recurring side characters in the show. By the time the show was on its 10th season, Herbert had appeared in over 50 episodes. By the time the show was in its 20th season, he was as much a fixture of the cast as Quagmire or Cleveland or Joe. Herbert is a predator fixated on children. The character is not coded that way or merely implied to be. The character is a man who is openly, obviously, and constantly fixated on a teenage boy. The boy is Chris Griffin. The show has built episode after episode around the joke. Herbert tries to get Chris to come into his house. Herbert hires Chris for chores around the property. Herbert invites Chris to dinner. Herbert babysits Chris and his siblings. Herbert opens the door to Chris in his bathrobe. Herbert looks at Chris through windows. Herbert sings songs about Chris. Herbert collects pictures of Chris. Herbert dreams about Chris. The joke every single time is that Herbert's behavior toward Chris is deeply inappropriate, and the adults in the show either do not notice or do not care. The character was created by Mike Henry. Mike Henry is a writer and voice actor who has been with Family Guy since the very beginning. He is the brother of Patrick Henry, who was a classmate of Seth MacFarlane at the Rhode Island School of Design in the early 1990s. When MacFarlane got the show picked up at Fox, he brought Mike on as a writer. Mike's first character on the show was Cleveland Brown, the calm black neighbor who eventually got his own spin-off series. Mike's second big character was Herbert. Henry has spoken about how the character started in a few interviews over the years. The voice came first. Henry said he had based the voice and the look on a real elderly man he had known when he was in high school. He had worked at a grocery store in Virginia. There had been an old man who came in often. The old man had a soft southern voice with a whistle in it from missing teeth. The old man was a sweet person in real life. There was nothing predatory about the real man. Henry just liked imitating the way he talked. He used the voice for laughs at parties. He used it again when he and his brother and friends were goofing around. The voice was a comedy voice, a way of doing an old man, the way comedians do voices. When Family Guy needed an old neighbor for the Southern episode, Henry pulled the voice out and used it. The character that came out of his mouth in that recording session was a sweet old man who happened to want to give a popsicle to a teenage boy. The predatory angle was not in the original idea. The predatory angle came later. Henry has said in interviews, including a 2012 interview, that he pitched the predatory direction to the writer's room himself. He thought it would be funny if the audience slowly figured out over multiple episodes what the man actually was. The writers liked the idea. The character moved in that direction. The voice stayed sweet. The body stayed frail. The man kept smiling. The implications underneath the smile got darker every appearance. The way the show animated him is the part that has aged the worst. Herbert is drawn to look harmless. He is small. He is bent over. He needs his walker to stand up. He shuffles when he moves. His face is full of soft lines. He looks like a kindly grandfather. The audience is supposed to look at him and see a sweet old man, and then have to swallow their reaction when the sweet old man says something predatory. The contrast is the joke. The contrast is also what made the joke last. A scary-looking predator would have been hard to put on Family Guy for 2 decades. A small, smiling, cane-bound old man could be put anywhere, and the audience would let him in. The other piece of the design is the song he sings. Herbert has, over the years, sung multiple full musical numbers about Chris. Real songs, real lyrics, real production. The animation slows down, the lighting changes, the show moves into proper musical mode for the joke. There is one in particular from the season 6 episode Play It Again, Brian, where Herbert hires Chris to do yard work and then sings a long ballad about how he is fixated on Chris and how he is trying to keep his feelings hidden. The song is well written. The song is well performed. The melody is genuinely catchy. Henry's voice work in the number is the kind of thing that, in any other context, would be a beautiful old man's love song. But the song is about a 14-year-old being sung by an 80-year-old. The audience watching the episode is asked to sit through the whole musical number, hold the laugh, and treat the fixation as a joke about the man being a creep. Many fans online have called the song one of the most uncomfortable musical numbers on the entire show. Many other fans have called it one of the funniest things the show ever made. The split tells you everything about the kind of cover the cartoon style provides. The show, every once in a while, has acknowledged what the character is. There is a moment in the season 8 episode, Spies Reminiscent of Us, where Stewie is asked by federal agents if there are any strange people in his neighborhood. Stewie pauses. Stewie says, "Well, there is a predator up the street that nobody seems to be doing anything about, but it is mainly because he is so funny." The line is one of the most famous Stewie lines among fans. The line is also, when written down, a confession. The show is admitting on screen, in the words of one of its own characters, that everyone in the world of Family Guy knows what Herbert is. Everyone in the world of Family Guy has decided not to do anything about it. The reason given by the show itself is that the man is funny. The audience watching the show has been doing the same thing for 2 decades, watching, knowing, choosing the laugh. Critics have called the character out repeatedly. TV Guide, in a February 2015 article, listed pedophilia as one of the 12 biggest taboos Family Guy had broken and named Herbert as the creepiest reference to the topic. The Parents Television Council, the watchdog group that had been complaining about Family Guy for 15 years by then, used Herbert as one of its repeated arguments that the show should be moved out of early primetime hours. The IGN Entertainment website, in its review of the show's Star Wars parody Blue Harvest, criticized the writers for putting Herbert in the role of Obi-Wan Kenobi, a character who, in the original films, is a wise old mentor to a teenage Luke Skywalker. The review pointed out that the casting choice took an iconic father-figure relationship from a beloved film and turned it into a long, uncomfortable predator joke that lasted the whole runtime of the special. The fact that Herbert keeps coming back is the part that makes him a permanent piece of the show's dark side. He is not a one-episode misfire. He is not a deep-cut joke buried in Season 3. He is a fixture. He is in Season 20. He has appeared in episodes that aired this decade. He has new lines, new songs, new scenes. The character was given his full real name, John Herbert, late in the show's run. He was a World War II veteran, the show explained, with a backstory and a history. He has dated other characters. He has had storylines about being lonely. He has been treated, sometimes almost sympathetically, as a sad old man whose only crime is wanting things he cannot have. The show has been careful across the years to never explicitly show him doing the worst thing the character clearly wants to do. The show keeps him just on the edge. He tries, he fails, he keeps trying. The audience laughs and the cycle starts again next episode. Mike Henry, the man behind the voice, has described his role on the show in a way that explains how Herbert keeps surviving. He has said in interviews, with self-deprecating humor, that his job is basically to make Seth MacFarlane laugh, that he is essentially paid to be a comedian for an audience of one. If the joke makes MacFarlane laugh in the writer's room, the joke makes the show. If the joke does not make MacFarlane laugh, the joke does not make the show. Herbert has, by Henry's own admission, been kept alive on Family Guy for over 20 years because the man at the top of the show keeps finding the character funny. Whatever the audience thinks, whatever the critics think, whatever the watchdog groups think, the decision rests on whether one man in one room laughs at the bit when it is pitched. There is one other detail about Herbert that fans of the show have brought up over the years and that the writers have never really answered. The relationship between the character and his audience has shifted over time, but the relationship between the character and the children of the show has not. Chris has aged in the same frozen way Meg has. Chris has been a 14-year-old boy for over 2 decades. Stewie has been a 1-year-old for over 2 decades. The show keeps these characters frozen because the show works that way. The Griffin children do not grow up. They cannot grow up. The format will not let them. Which means that Herbert, the recurring elderly neighbor, has been openly fixated on the same 14-year-old boy for over 2 real decades. The boy never gets older. The man never stops trying. The audience that started watching Family Guy in 2001 is now in their 40s. The boy on screen has not turned 15. The man on screen has not stopped wanting him. The cartoon physics of the show preserves the worst aspects of the character forever. What Herbert reveals about Family Guy is something the show has been telling its audience in the open for the entire run. The show is built to test how much the audience will laugh at. The show is built to slowly move the line of what is acceptable on television. Herbert is the longest-running test of that. Over 20 years of a man who wants to prey on a child, played as a recurring joke on a show that has aired across multiple major networks and streaming services, watched by hundreds of millions of people, awarded with Emmy nominations, kept on the air through ratings collapses and revival. The character has lasted because the audience has let him last. The show puts him on screen. The audience laughs. The cycle repeats. 20 years go by. Nobody pulls the plug. Mike Henry left some of his other Family Guy roles in 2020. He stepped away from voicing Cleveland Brown, the black character he had played since the start, saying that a black actor should be the one voicing a black character. The decision was praised. The handoff happened. Henry kept voicing Herbert. The Predator stayed his. The show did not address it. The character kept appearing. There is a strange piece of context that ties the Herbert story to the bigger pattern of the show's dark side. The man who created Herbert, who pitched the predatory angle, who has voiced the character for over 2 decades, is part of the same writers' rooms that produced the cutaways about Kevin Spacey, the jokes about real-life predators, the shock material about children being preyed upon, and the running pattern of treating the worst things adults can do to children as material for a Sunday night sitcom. Family Guy did not stumble into this material accidentally. The show has been building, refining, and protecting one of its most controversial running characters for over 20 years, while also making jokes about real men in the industry who turned out to be doing some of the things the cartoon was joking about. The show makes the audience laugh at predators. The show then turns out to have known about real ones. The show keeps making the audience laugh anyway. Before we move on, subscribe if you are enjoying this breakdown. That is the dark side of Family Guy that no fan compilation video on the internet really captures. The dark side is not a single episode. The dark side is the long pattern of what the show has been quietly training its viewers to find funny, week after week, for over 2 decades. And all of it, every cutaway, every controversy, every banned episode, every dead character, every confessional bottle episode, every Meg insult, every Herbert song, every Boston Marathon coincidence, every Kevin Spacey wink was almost erased from television history twice. The show was canceled. The show came back. The story of how it came back and what it has used that second life to do is the last piece of the picture. This is the story of the 2 cancellations and the DVD that built a cartoon empire. The story of how Family Guy came back from the dead should not have happened. When a network kills a show, the show stays dead. The actors move on. The writers find new jobs. The animation studio takes the cells off the wall. The fans complain online for a few months and then drift to other shows. The cancellation is the end. Family Guy got canceled. Family Guy stayed dead for years. Family Guy came back anyway. The show is the first one in American television history to be revived purely because of how many copies of a plastic disc people had bought at a store. That sentence changed how every network in the country has thought about cancellation since. The first life of the show began on January 31st, 1999, on a Sunday night right after Super Bowl 33. Fox had paid a fortune for the rights to the game that year, which meant Fox controlled the post-game time slot. The network gave that slot to a new animated series from a 25-year-old creator who had pitched a 15-minute pilot the year before. 22 million people saw the first episode. The reviews were mixed. The network kept going. The first season ran for 7 episodes. The second season started later that year and ran longer. The show found its rhythm. The cutaway gags developed. The voice acting locked in. By the end of season 2, Family Guy had become a real show with a real audience. The network was not as patient as the show needed. Fox kept moving Family Guy around the schedule. The show had been in the post-Super Bowl slot, then in a Sunday slot, then in a Thursday slot. Every move hurt the ratings. The Thursday slot was the worst. Fox put Family Guy on Thursday nights at 8 against Friends and Survivor. A strange cartoon about a fat dad and a talking baby was being asked to pull viewers away from 2 of the biggest shows in network history. It did not pull them. The ratings dropped. In 2000, after the second season, Fox canceled Family Guy for the first time. There was a reprieve. Fans wrote letters. The network reconsidered. The show came back for a third season in July of 2001. Fox kept moving the show around again, time slot after time slot. The ratings kept slipping. Fox canceled Family Guy a second time in 2002. There was one episode that had been finished but had been held back over fears it was too anti-Semitic. That episode, When You Wish Upon a Weinstein, would not air on Fox for years. The show was done. The cast scattered. The writers started looking for new work. Family Guy was, by every definition the industry uses, dead. For about a year, that was the end of the story. The first 3 seasons existed as a strange, short-lived cartoon nobody had really known what to do with. Fox tried to sell the rerun rights. Fox could not find a buyer. Most cable networks did not want it. The show had a bad reputation by then. Bad ratings, bad press, bad behavior from the network. The president of 20th Century Fox Television said later that the rights to the Family Guy reruns were sold eventually almost for free. The buyer was Cartoon Network. The reruns would be shown in a late-night block called Adult Swim. Adult Swim was, in 2002, a few hours of late-night cartoons aimed at college kids and night shift workers. Nobody at Fox thought the deal mattered. The reruns started airing on Adult Swim on April 20th, 2003. The first weeks were quiet. Then, the numbers started climbing. The viewership of the late-night block went up by 239% over the months after Family Guy joined the lineup. Family Guy became the highest-rated program on Adult Swim. It was the highest-rated program on the entire network during its time slot. Something else was happening at the same time. On the same week, the show premiered on Adult Swim. The first 2 seasons came out on DVD. The first month, it sold 400,000 copies. By the end of the year, the box set had sold over 2.2 million copies. It became the best-selling television DVD of 2003 in America. The only television DVD that had ever sold more was the first season of Chappelle's Show, a show that had not been canceled twice. A show that had been canceled twice was suddenly the second highest-selling television series ever released on disc. The combination of the two numbers changed everything. 2.2 million copies sold, a 239% ratings boost on Adult Swim. The audience for Family Guy had not been the small group the cancellation had assumed. The audience had been waiting for the show to come back. The audience was big enough to buy 2.2 million plastic discs at $20 apiece. Fox did the math. On May 20th, 2004, Fox ordered 35 new episodes of Family Guy. The show was back. The first new episode of the revival aired on May 1st, 2005. The episode was called North by North Quahog. It opened with the Griffins on the couch, where Peter explained to the family that they had been canceled because Fox had needed to make room for other shows. Peter then listed by name nearly 30 Fox shows that had aired between his cancellation and his return. Shows like Dark Angel, Titus, Undeclared, Firefly, Wonderfalls, The Tick, Greg the Bunny, and more than 20 others. Every show on the list had been canceled. The joke was a real list. The joke was the show telling the network, on the air, that it had been wrong. The first new episode pulled 11.85 million viewers, bigger than the show had ever pulled in its first 3 seasons combined. The revival was, from the first night, the biggest hit Fox had on the schedule. By 2009, Family Guy was nominated for the Primetime Emmy for Outstanding Comedy Series. That nomination was the first time an animated series had been nominated in the comedy category in nearly 50 years. The last time it had happened was in 1961, when the Flintstones had been nominated. The cartoon was being taken seriously by the industry that had canceled it twice. As of today, Family Guy has run for over 25 years and more than 23 seasons. It is the second longest-running American animated series in television history, behind only The Simpsons.